Good morning. I'd like to call the Tuesday, April 21st, 2020 meeting of the Reno County Commission to order, please. Our first item of business would be the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would join me, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, our next item would be an update from the Health Department, Director Nick Baldetti, and Emergency Management Director Adam Weishire. If they're on the line, please.
Morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, just fine.
Yes. All right. I'll go through just an update. Then I have one more COVID-19 related discussion as part of my update, and then I might have Emergency Manager Adam Weishire visit, and then I do have one other item that I just want to bring to the county's attention. It is somewhat related to COVID-19, but also has broader implications as well. In terms of the status of COVID-19 for Reno County, or generally for the United States, we are up to 788,110 cases in the U.S. That's with 42,374 deaths. For the state of Kansas, we have, as of yesterday from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, 1,986 cases in Kansas with 100 registered deaths. 405 of those are requiring hospitalization. Specifically for Reno County, we have registered 15 cases. 6 of those have been designated as recovered. We have thankfully no deaths in Reno County. That means we have nine active cases here within Reno County. Currently, as of yesterday, 2 of those 9 active cases are hospitalized. We've had a total of 4 hospitalizations throughout the duration. So those are relatively good numbers, if you will, quote unquote, good numbers. In addition, as a result of our self-reporting form that was developed a number of weeks ago, we've had 69 Reno County residents self-identify as part of for disease investigation, and we're still at 8 of those being classified by the Health Department as suspect. 2 of those 8 we're actually waiting on test results, so hopefully we'll get either confirmation or negation of their suspect status, hopefully today. The other item that I had that I wanted to announce to the board, which was also announced on the 8:30 sit rep call that we hold Monday through Friday, is there has been planning in place for about the last week with that includes County Administrator Randy Partington and Commissioner Bob Bush in the formulation of an economic recovery task force, specifically for Reno County. We've also been working hand in hand with the Hutchinson and Reno County Area Chamber of Commerce President Deborah Tufel in establishing this task force. The impetus for this task force is to have a plan that is specific to Reno County area businesses and industry, have a plan in place, in hand, if you will, that as soon as the governor's orders, which Executive Order 20-16 is the order that installed a Kansas-wide stay-at-home order, and the subsequent Executive Order 20-24, which extended the statewide order to May 3rd. Once those were to lapse, under the assumption that the governor doesn't take further action and extends the statewide order longer, that we would have a plan or a safely try and reopen business in Reno County. We had an initial meeting yesterday, and the expectation is that through the remaining duration of this week, that the beginning subcommittees of specific industries would be convened this week, and of those subcommittees, a specific voice or leader, if you will, of one of those subcommittees will then be the orator for the task force, the steering group, if you will. And the hope is to, by the end of the week, have the first convening of the steering committee task force to begin conversations on the formulation of strategies and a plan specifically for Reno County. So that's the big update that I wanted to communicate to the board. I'm happy to answer any questions specifically to that, or I can allow Adam to give his report, and then I do have one other thing at the conclusion of Adam's report as well.
So, Nick, before we move on, I have a statement I'd just like to make. When we put this list together in conjunction with the chamber, we worked very hard to make sure that each one of these subcommittees or industries had representatives from outside of the Hutchinson and South Hutch, I guess you want to call it metropolitan area. Commissioner Hurst, I would appreciate it if you would contact Deborah and ask her for a list of who we have on those groups, see if there are any other partners that you would like to see or you think would be good to involve in those different industries. We did our best, but I will tell you that every one of those subcommittees has 2 or 3 non-metro, if you will, members on it to represent, ensure that we represent the entire county. But Ron, you might have some good people to involve as stakeholders in this. But Deborah's got that final list.
Okay, Bob, I will do that. We have tentatively scheduled the Chamber's Ag Committee meeting for this Thursday at noon. And
right.
So I think that would be an excellent time to add to that. But I will contact Deborah.
But I'm also speaking about other industries that you know about, and that list is going to be going out soon. So if you wanted to add somebody, today would be the day to kind of add it, if you can think of somebody in other industries besides ag that you'd like to see represented.
Yeah, and when I was speaking of ag, I wasn't thinking of necessarily production. I was thinking of both the manufacturing and the processing industries within ag.
Right, but we're also doing banking, stylists, all of that, and there's a lot of people I don't know outside of my district.
Will do.
Thank you. I'd like to have as much input as possible. Thank you, Nick.
My comment on this would be that I am certainly pleased that we're this far in putting this group together. My only concern, it sounds a little big and a little complicated, but if, 2 weeks moves very, very fast when you've got 20 people working on subjects. So I guess I would rather have a plan than a group. So just keep that in mind as this moves forward, that if the group has to be working towards an end on the 3rd for a possible plan.
Yeah,
Makes sense?
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, that is the outcome we're seeking to have, is a physical plan. I know it's a short timeline, and of course the unknown is we don't know if May 3rd is truly our date or not. But we will be, and I didn't mention this in my initial comments, but we will be working off of existing guidance, both the White House's guidance. The Kansas Chamber of Commerce has released some guidance. Some academic institutions, such as Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Health, has released the documentation. So we'll be leaning into those to inform and try and formulate and draft some written guidelines and plans in place. I'm not just speaking figuratively, but we'd like to have physically a plan in place for businesses to be able to lean into at such time that they can open up safely.
Is something that can be done in industry?
So the applicability of taking temperature is certainly can be a reality. I think it becomes an aspect of supplies of thermometers. I know those are in very short supply, but also in high demand. But it is certainly one strategy that can be instituted in terms of screening employees
Okay.
before entrance. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Commissioner Bush, for being part of this group, and thank you for the chamber to be working with us to put this together for the community's good.
If you don't have any questions in regard to that, I think I'll let Adam go into his report. And then again, I have one other thing before the conclusion of our updates.
Okay.
Morning, Commissioners. For those who have sat on our morning conference calls, not much has changed or will change on this report. So I do want to give an update here so the public can hear it as well. Currently, we're one of 89 counties out of the 105 in Kansas that have declared a public health emergency. There's 69 counties in Kansas with cases. KDHE is looking at 39 clusters. 14 of those are in long-term care, 2 in group living facilities, 5 in church gatherings, 1 in a correctional facility, 2 in healthcare facilities, and 15 in private companies. The Kansas Department of Agriculture has been spending a considerable amount of time looking at the Kansas beef producers that produce 25% of the nation's meat. KDAA Secretary Beam stated that Kansas has scaled back production has occurred in order to meet guidelines, but production is continuing. The challenges are not because of a shortage of food, but in the distribution process. In response to these clusters, there's 4 counties that have set up non-congregate shelters. Those counties are Ford, Benny, Lyon, and Seward County, and they've started additional testing. The state received 7,000 test kits this weekend, so it's not the large amount of testing that we would expect. PPE burn rates, our personal protective equipment burn rates are significantly down, and that's in direct relation to all of our healthcare providers, our first responders, changing the way they do business, changing their policies so their people are still adequately protected, but they're not going through quite as many sets as they once were. 2 weeks ago, when we talked about burn rates were anywhere between 1,200 and actually probably 1,100 and 1,800 sets of personal protective equipment a day. And last week when I ran the numbers, we were right around 650. So it's down quite a bit. I'm going to run those numbers again tomorrow. It takes quite a bit of time to run the numbers, but they're due to the state and to the federal government every Wednesday by 5 p.m. Tonight, we're expecting some severe weather. Our biggest threats are hail up to the size of the quarters and high winds. Directly related to the COVID response, we have changed how we respond to severe weather. Usually we open up our emergency operations center in the basement of the courthouse at 210 West 1st. But in direct relation to this, we're trying to not congregate together and not have everyone who would respond to an event in the same room at the same time. So what we're doing is we're doing it virtually. So we'll still be monitoring the weather and we'll still be coordinating spotters and all that good stuff, but we're not coming into a physical location to do that. So the COVID response has changed how we're going to respond to severe weather. And the last thing I want to leave you with is just thanks for all the support from the elected officials, all the employees of the county, of the city, and Reno County as a whole, as the community. I don't think we're facing some of the big problems that some of the other communities are facing. I know that there's some members of the public that are getting a little restless, but the support has been great, and we have not seen some of the issues the larger communities have. For that, I'll stand for any questions. If you don't have any, I'll kick it back over to Nick.
Well, Adam, just a comment. I think that due to the work of Nick and you and the whole county, of Reno County does show that we only have 15 cases, only 9 active cases, and for a county this size to do that well shows that we've been doing a lot of things very, very well. And I continue to thank the group that has been extremely active on this for leading us, and I think their leadership is showing result on this, and the fact that we only have 15 cases is something to be not proud of, but shows success. Back to Nick.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for the comments, Chairman. But again, I would definitely echo it's certainly been a team sport, much in line with your comments, and I do appreciate this community's response and support. What I wanted to bring up with you this morning is last week I was on a Kansas Association of Counties board meeting, of which I had the opportunity to visit with a representative from the National Association of Counties. And part of the conversation revolved around this fourth, I'm going to say stimulus. I don't necessarily want to call it stimulus, but fourth stimulus or relief package that is being vetted and set to be voted on at the national level. As a part of that conversation, that relief package, there's been conversation around funding specifically for city and county governments. Now, I was on a call, and Commissioner Hurst was also on that call, and County Administrator Randy Partington was also on that call, and so they might also confirm these comments just in case. But I understood from Senator Moran yesterday that it looks like maybe that funding that was initially being discussed to come to city and county governments is no longer being discussed as part of this fourth relief package from the federal government. However, with that said, I believe there was a comment still that there's the potential for further relief, potentially. And if it were the case that city and county governments were to be a part of that discussion in terms of receiving some funding from the federal level, I think it's really important, obviously as commissioners of a county organization, you know very well the impact already in terms of the COVID-19 response to the county government here in Reno County. But specifically, as a result of that call, I just wanted to leave you with a few numbers in terms of what had been discussed in terms of this fourth relief package, and should it get brought up again. Initially, the conversations being had in terms of funding for the state of Kansas would have essentially resulted, and this is from the associate from the National Association of Counties, and that the funding that was being discussed would have resulted in about $160 million that would have been funneled to cities within the state of Kansas, and then it would have left $16 million to be funneled to county governments. It's in the state of Kansas, the public health infrastructure, which is the frontline response to the current pandemic, are generally all held under the auspice of county governments. And for the disparity in terms of the funding to be pushed to the city level as opposed to the county level, specifically in terms of a relief from the current pandemic response, I think is disproportionate in terms of what the needs are. That's also not to mention the aspect of county funding and taxpayer dollars through the county lens that goes into our local hospital, mental health services, emergency management, et cetera, all aspects of frontline work that have been integral in the response to COVID-19. That doesn't even include the law enforcement aspect of sheriffs and the county coroner, which fortunately and unfortunately all play a very pivotal role in the response of what's currently going on. I did send to you, I believe it was yesterday, a document that I would refer you to from the National Association of Counties, just talking about general expenditures for counties and the revenue lags that can be expected in this response. But I simply wanted to bring it to your attention in this forum publicly, in that I think to the best of our ability, I think it would behoove Reno County, if it is the will of the board, to perhaps reach out to our national representatives in Senator Moran and Representative Marshall in terms of keeping county governments just as much as city governments at the forefront of any potential conversations of funding at the federal level. So that's simply what I wanted to bring to the board's attention. I would be happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability, or I know Commissioner Hurst or Randy were also on the call, and I would, if they have anything to add that I may have skimmed over or missed. Anyway, I would stand for any questions or comments.
Okay, are there any questions from commissioners to Nick on this subject?
Sorry, I was muted again. Nick, did you understand this the way I did, that the state has already received $1.25 billion for state under the CARES program? We don't know where that's all going, or how much is handed down from the state to local government.
Yeah, so I understood Senator Moran that CARES money has been disseminated to the state of Kansas, but I also, and I would, with the caveat of my limited understanding, but of that money that's been funneled through, I think that it's been primarily allocated to the Department of Labor funnels versus actual supplementation of revenue shortfalls that are being seen both at a state and local level. That's my understanding of that CARES funding, but again, I don't know if that's fully paints the picture of where that money is going.
Well, thanks for a little clarification on that. Yes, and I was kind of under the same impression that you were at that meeting, and maybe Randy can chime in, that cities and counties, while there has been a couple of money sent to Johnson and Sedgwick County, that the rest of the counties are not participating in that. And so I would go along with your recommendation, Nick.
And commissioners, just to add a little bit, yeah, I think that stimulus package, as Nick mentioned, has already been dispersed, but Sedgwick County, Johnson County being over 500,000 in population receive that money, and across the nation, all cities that are over that population are ones that got the money the first. The rest was supposed to go to states, and it was up to the states to disperse it. So what the state of Kansas has done with it, if they've received it, is unknown to us.
But certainly that money wouldn't last very far with the unemployment claims that are coming in at the state level. Okay, any more questions by the council, the commission to health department or emergency management?
So Nick, you're asked that we put together a letter that goes to our federal officials saying that counties need to be part of this funding or any future funding. Is that the ask?
I think that's what I'm advocating for, is just that Reno County make sure to put their name on some advocacy to ensure that counties aren't forgotten in potential relief funding.
Of course, I would support that.
I would too, and I like the idea that we have the opportunity to look forward, and that hopefully we can come up with some safety plans so that all business on May 3rd.
Okay, Randy, I think you're getting some direction to address letters to our congressional delegation as per the conversation this morning.
Okay.
And if you get those ready, I'll be available to sign them. Or if you want all the commissioners to sign them, which is probably better, just notify us when it's ready. Okay, if there's no more discussion on this item, let's go on to item 4, public comment on items not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address the commission on any item that is not on the agenda? Or anybody that's on this conference call wants to address the commission on any item that's not on the agenda?
There's no one here in person.
Okay, seeing not, we'll go on to commission and county administrator comments. Commissioner Hurst, would you start? Is there anything you want to add to the your attending the conference call with Senator Moran yesterday, or any other items, please?
I think for more detail, this, I believe it was yesterday late, many of you may have received Senator Moran's email with his information. And if you haven't, the details on monies and so forth, funding, are quite brought out and determined in that report that Senator Moran emails to constituents. And so those things are pretty well summed in that email. He talked about this potential Phase 4 legislation that we visited about counties and cities. He made some comments with people can't afford what government's doing, as well as business shutdown. And so he made a point in that. Said that of 504, the SBA loans have been, and this detail is in that email, but 26,245 loans have gone out. He mentioned that, if I remember correctly, that there was SBA normally does about $30 billion, and they were tasked with 300 and some $million. So there's it was quite an undertaking for SBA, and that there will be another round with SBA coming out, and with the furloughs coming, we're seeing with especially with the health industry today, the sooner we can come up with a plan, I think the better it will be for our county. As far as ag is also covered in that, there'll be a lot more recipients to the dollars that are sent out, and so the monies won't be that much per individual as they were with the MSP program. So I think the rest of that's pretty well covered, what Dick's covered. I would certainly second Commissioner Chairman Steller's comment with regarding to our staff and Adam and Nick of how well they've helped coordinate all of this with the health industry that we have here in Hutchinson. And I think it was brought out very well how many people attended this Zoom meeting with that was supposed to last an hour and went about an hour and 45 minutes with excellent representation, for broad representation of business industry from Reno County that was involved in this, as well as educational people that were involved. And I thought it was very informative for local to provide that information to Senator Moran. And I think that's about all I want to get into today on that. Randy was also in there. I thought it was very informative. People really spoke up about their situations. The testing was the biggest thing that was brought out is we need testing kits.
Okay, I hope Senator heard us loud and clear on that testing item. I think, I hope that they understand that issue. Anything else, Commissioner Hurst?
No, sir.
Okay, Commissioner Bush, anything from you, and do you want to elaborate on this committee that is starting to be organized with your help?
Just a little bit. Number one, again, the Chamber is doing basically a lot of the legwork on this with direction from Nick and as well as the 2 cents I put in. So we need to very much thank them and give them some love for all the work they're doing organizing these Zoom meetings and putting them together. The second thing I wanted to say is that with these meetings that are being put together, the meetings are all going to be Zoom meetings. So if you would like to audit that meeting, then you could let Deborah know that you'd like to be notified with a Zoom link of all the different committee meetings, or if there's just a specific 1 or 2 committees that you'd like to audit, you could Zoom in and listen to the discussion that the group's having. That's completely appropriate. It's really up to you, but that's something I wanted to put out there. And I also wanted to just say that, this could very well be, and Chairman Sellers, you make a good point. We're trying to get a lot of stuff done in a short period of time, but there's a lot of information that's already out there that is being sent to each one of the people in this group. So if they read their packet, they're going to show up at these meetings with a lot of information that they may not have already had for that discussion. So hopefully that'll jumpstart the process and we get things done sooner. And of course, there's always the possibility that we do this work and then the governor's office extends by 2 weeks the stay-at-home order, in which case then that gives us 2 more weeks to kind of improve the documents and the work that we've done and get things more organized. So that's basically all I would say about that. That's really all I have this morning, unless you have any questions for me about these groups and how we're trying to put this together.
No, I think you and Nick have covered it very, very well. Anything else, Commissioner Bush?
No, sir.
Okay, I have 2 or 3 items this morning. First, I'd like to thank the United Way and the Hutchinson Community Foundation and the Chamber for their activity in this buying gift certificates for businesses that might be under hardship. I think there's a large group of those, and I believe they announced that over $100,000 has been used in the certificate program, and I believe that the United Way is actively working on a program to help people that have become unemployed due to this crisis. And I think that that's a program that people should be supporting as they can. We haven't seen this before in our community, and so people need to help, have the ability to help in these efforts. Second thing is I'm hoping, and again this relates maybe to previous things that have been discussed today, I'm hoping that maybe our May 5th commission meeting could be held as a group once again. The Zoom meetings work okay, but we miss they're better when we can all relate directly to each other. So I'm hoping that the May 5th meeting could be in group. Finally, I was able to listen to the Governor Kelly's weekly conference call last Friday at 3:30 p.m. I didn't mention last week, but I couldn't listen the week before. I think they sent out the wrong numbers to the people to listen to. At least I couldn't get on. Obviously, she announced that her stay-at-home order is still until May 3rd. I thought Secretary Norman with the Department of Health gave a good report. Talking testing is still a problem, which we all know about. And obviously that there was some discussion that the state felt, people felt that the state was hoarding test kits, and that was not truth. Uh, Emergency management update. PPP is slow. And at present, 220 National Guardsmen are on duty in the state of Kansas helping with this. Thought the most interesting report probably was from Secretary of Commerce David Totlin. Of that $349 billion that was allowed for PPP for small business loans, there was 26,000 in the state of Kansas with 4.38 billion in loan value, and I thought that was fairly significant. I think there has been some mention through this that the state of Kansas was one of the leaders per population in the receipt of this money. So that's something that we can thank our local community banks for being involved in. Unemployment update, there was 30,778 claims in the last 4 weeks. Obviously that has bogged down the system and is being hard to process. I think that's the highlights of her call. Glad she's doing this weekly call and updating everybody on things. I believe that's the items that I have as far as remarks this morning. Let's go to County Administrator comments. Randy?
Okay, thank you. With my comments, and I didn't know if there's an echo, if you wanted me to take care of it now, the budget cuts, or wait to move that to the end of the meeting. Kind of wanted to see what you thought.
Let's move that down to additions to the agenda, please.
Okay.
Budget cuts and.
Okay, then I'll go over the quicker items. Just kind of to let you know, the temporary expanded family and medical leave and emergency paid sick leave policy that was included in the packet is really here just for your information. It's part of COVID-19. It's required by the federal government, but it's a temporary policy that ends December 31st of this year. It's just to let you know, but I didn't know if you had any questions. Renee's on the Zoom meeting in case you do have questions about that, but it's pretty much just about the COVID-19 related illnesses and issues.
Okay, it's fairly long and fairly complicated. Renee, is that being understood by the employees, and is it being used at all by the employment of the county?
I'm hoping it's understood. I haven't heard of anybody asking any further questions. We do have, employees being using the paid sick leave in some instances, and I believe we have one employee using the FMLA for child care. So I suspect those could change as we go on, but right now it seems to be going okay.
Very good. Very good. Everybody's job has certainly changed due to this, and HR has had to be very involved in what we're doing. So,
yeah.
Randy, are there other comments that you have at this point in time?
Yes, I just wanted to let you know that with the assistant death scene investigator, I kind of mentioned it at the last commission meeting, but we do have that out on the county website as a job advertisement. It's kind of really right now it's an assistant to John, who works under the district attorney, but this would be more of an on-call and be paid for each call that they make, and hopefully they would learn over time, and if we could find multiple people, but one of them maybe would be the full-time replacement when John decides to retire at sometime in the near future. I was just letting you know that in case you look on the website. And then Renee and I have been talking, and we'll have more information probably after today and maybe in the future about a shared work program. It's a Kansas Department of Labor program that allows, if we get to the point in budget cuts, for furloughs or temporary type of furloughs, to where the employees would be able to get unemployment pay for reduction in hours. But we're still looking into the details of that. There's a conference call later today that we may join, and I'll bring back more information when I have more, I guess, significant numbers of possible savings that it would be for Reno County before I truly or officially present it to you for recommendation. But I wanted to let you know we are looking into that.
Okay.
Those are the only comments I have.
Okay. Randy, I noticed that Finney County COVID cases are above ours. Is it just because you left that county's not doing as well in this environment, or what?
You know, I'm really not sure, but
Okay.
I do know that does give me the opportunity. Reno County staff is doing an excellent job. Nick, Adam, everyone at the health department and the community is doing a great job of making sure all citizens of Reno County know the importance of, you know, social distancing, stay at home. So I think it does illustrate how well our staff here at Reno County is doing.
Okay, thank you for that. Is county counselor there? Does he have any comments today?
No, he doesn't.
Okay. Let's go on to item 6, determine additions to the agenda. Are there any additions by Commissioner Hurst or Commissioner Bush today to the agenda that they'd like to suggest?
Not today.
No. Okay. I do have an item that I'd like to add to the agenda. If I get a second for this, I would like to add to the agenda that we consider our emergency order 20-23 and move to rescind the no band order effective at noon today, 12:01 p.m. April 21st. And this motion, if seconded, would be to suggest that all other ordinances relating to burning within Reno County would be effective.
Is it okay if I ask what's changed since last week when you made a very impassioned speech about the fact that everybody has to, everybody's taking a hit on this and we need to support staff and move ahead?
Obviously, I did say that. I didn't say move ahead. I said that everybody's been affected by the virus situation. I think I'm becoming more and more concerned about the viability of our ag economy. Commodity prices are at an all-time low. Does not look like in the near future that those will go up. Both cattle prices, live cattle prices and live hog prices have been gone down greatly in the past few weeks. I think our farm economy could be maybe one of our most desperate economies. And the more I look at this, I think that we have a very thin window here, as Commissioner Hurst has said in the past, to take care of these pastures. We're past the prime time, but I think we've got 10 days to maybe 2 weeks to do some of this if the county would allow it. And I feel like maybe that we need to help our farm community. I've had many farmers communicate with me that this is really, really hurting their farm operation. And from my standpoint, at this point in time, I'm willing to accept burning within Reno County.
So I guess my response to that would be that when this was originally approved by the commission, it was based on the opportunity to weigh in. They have not weighed in or called us or contacted us about the safety issue because we have kept the burn ban in place. If we're talking about eliminating the burn ban, then I think we owe it to our first responders to have them respond to us as well and lobby us, if you will, just as the farmers have lobbied you and changed your mind. And I'm not saying they don't have good points, but there's two issues being discussed here. And one is the safety of first responders, and they haven't had the opportunity to speak up and to contact us in numbers as well. And we should give them that opportunity. So I would suggest that we either put this information out there, like you've said, and we open it up for discussion as an action item next week. Or if you think that's waiting too long, let's have a special commission meeting just on this issue anytime this week, and I'll be there. But I feel like we need to let our first responders, who are not risking money, but their safety, have a say in this as well. There's two sides of the street, and we've only heard the science side from staff. I think we ought to listen to the human safety side from our first responders, and that's the fire districts in our community.
Okay, Bob, you make a good point, and I don't disagree with any of your points made. I have talked to some of our first responders. I think some of our first responders, as Commissioner Hurst, I believe, has said in past commission meetings, the first responders were not visited with when this was suggested by emergency management. The first responders felt like that they should have been communicated with at that point in time. The first responders that I have communicated with felt out of that loop, and I don't want to speak for them, but I don't feel like if they weren't consulted the first time when we imposed this, that some of the comments that Commissioner Hurst has made in weeks past are valid, that it's not appropriate that we need to have a roll call of that group at this point in time. Again,
I don't agree.
Well, I understand that you don't agree, and I respect your comments. If Commissioner Hurst makes a second to this, we'll put it on the agenda. If he doesn't, we'll just leave it the way it is.
I would put a second on this motion, and I would say on the agenda. I think it's late and after the fact, but if there's still a few people out there who still want to burn some pastures, I think it's too late. It's after the April 15th deadline for CRP. And I wanted to correct one other thing. To the best of my knowledge, it wasn't 800 acres, it was 400 acres. It was a half section and 80. And so just thought I would throw that in to be more accurate with that fact. Is if you drive down there and take a look at it, why that's what it is. But I think there'll be such limit now. Commissioner Sellers, is this only for ag burning, or does it include open burning?
Well, my motion would be to repeal the emergency order of 20-23.
20-03.
So everything's open, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, except you have to comply with our regular county burning ordinance, which is in place before this emergency ordinance, which, as I understand, and Randy, you could help me here, I believe 911 has to be informed of where you're burning, when you're burning, and location and things of this nature.
And
Actually, we have Adam on the call now. Maybe he could chime in.
Just one other thing before that. You actually have a separate number besides 911. And I don't remember that. It's a 662 number, but I don't remember the other numbers that you call in rather than 911 on the normal prescribed burn.
Adam, would you like to make a comment or comments?
there's just a few things I want to clear up. The 810 acres came from GIS. We actually had someone out there on the fire lines who mapped the area and then brought it back to GIS, and it was done on the GIS calculation. So that's where the 810 acres came from. I believe that number is accurate. Last week, after the comments from the commission meeting, I did reach out to every single fire district in the county. There's 13 fire districts in the county with 12 fire chiefs, being that Hutch Fire services both Hutchinson and District 2. Of those, there's 3 districts that did not support a burn ban, and 2 districts that did not respond, and then 8 districts that supported the ban. So I did reach out to all the districts.
So Adam, you're suggesting that the majority of the fire districts that you contacted last week suggested to you that they support the burn ban?
Yes, sir. I contacted all 13 districts, and there was 8 that supported it, and then 2 that we didn't hear from. And the only negative comments I've received are from 3 districts.
Do you mind if I ask what the -3 did they get into specificity when they told you why they disagree with the burn ban?
One of them was simply just the complaints they're getting from their district. They're sick of answering the phone calls and telling them why they can't burn. It's the 3 that don't support the burn ban live in a big agriculture community, and I think they feel for their people in the area that they're servicing. That some of these people have been pretty vocal with them.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hurst, can you respond to Adam's poll of the fire districts that the majority of them would like us to continue with the burn ban? Can you respond to that?
The main thing I heard was regarding the fact that they have the ability, the manpower, to stay at home, and the equipment to be able to handle fires. And I would remind that KDHE, getting a little feedback here, KDHE as well as Department of Ag did not mention pasture burning. They were only suggesting that CRP be diminished some. And so it didn't have anything to do with pasture burning. We have other counties around that have not interfered with burning.
But Ron, also wasn't the whole point of the KDHE and what we've heard from our emergency management people, the health and safety of the first responders? And doesn't the fact that this burn that got out of control and burned 800 acres, I mean, if you want to say 400, I guess it makes it half as dangerous, but 800 acres according to GPS that require response from every first responder, fire department, and also a number of law enforcement officials. I mean, isn't that the point still there, that it's a safety issue? And you have 8 of the districts, and really 8 of 3 because 2 didn't respond. So you've got 8 that want to support the burn ban and want to keep it in place, and really 3 that don't.
Well, we're over the CRP burning now. And so I don't think that there'll be hardly any more burning done with regard to pastures. It's getting so late that I don't feel, and we have just a few that have got out of hand versus the ones that are controlled. And
but to your point, with 8 days left on this ban, why don't we just leave it in place, move ahead, and support our staff, support our first responders, the majority of the fire district people that are out there in the suits doing the work? Why don't we just support them and just kick this can down the road for 8 more days and honestly move on with our lives onto more important things like the coronavirus and the other ways that we need to protect our first responders?
Well, I go back to my original a week ago or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, that I still thought it was prudent, and why should we dim
and I would also chime in. I was shocked, but the editorial board supported this, and I know that everyone on the commission got a letter from a private citizen that has a tremendous amount of knowledge in this area that supported the burn ban and gave a number of really good reasons why we needed to keep it in place. There's two sides to this, and and again, I appreciate that, but Commissioner Sellers, I mean, you gave a list of very important financial things, but none of those, as I understand it, have much to do with pasture burning.
How many times do the firefighters, we have businesses that are functioning and they're having that 6-foot social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see I guess right now I'm hard pressed to understand why not, because the information I had, there was only, when we talked about Wyatt's health, and Adams made good points with regard to the people with asthma and so forth. But there's been, I think the data I showed, only 3 days where air quality was an instance, and that was basically out of the Flint Hills when there was thousands and thousands of acres burning, and that was okay. So we got maybe a quarter, half section here and there that's going to be burned that's not CRP, that doesn't produce the same volume in change in air quality.
I think we've allowed everybody to speak their mind on this. I think my last comment would be is I've decided that I feel like I voted the wrong way initially, and I should have voted the other way, and that's why I'm making this motion at this point in time. Is there a second to put this on the agenda for item 10A?
I will second that motion.
Hey, I guess keep with Robert's Rules of Order, we need a roll call here, please, Randy.
Commissioner Bush,
No.
Commissioner Hurst,
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Is there any other items that need to be talked about to additions to the agenda? If not, we'll go on to the item 7 of the agenda. It includes vouchers for $360,068.41, change orders, and March 2020 minutes. Is there a motion to approve the agenda in a second, please?
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented by staff with vouchers totaling.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst,
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, I believe item 8 is proclamations. Randy, is there anyone there to receive these 2 proclamations? If not, I'll read them.
We have the district attorney here.
Okay. First proclamation is Reno County Crime Victims' Rights Week. Whereas the victims' rights movement has resulted in the passage of laws at the state, local, and federal levels that establish essential rights for victims, and whereas crime victims' rights acts passed here in Kansas and at the federal level have provided victims with ways to participate meaningfully throughout the criminal justice process, and whereas the rights of crime victims are best protected when all participants in the criminal justice process, not only victims, are appropriately educated about the victims' rights, and whereas supporting victims of crime is crucial to the U.S. justice system because of our support, honors, the experiences of victims and allows them to fund autonomy and empowerment through achieving self-defined goals. And whereas we must help victims access the justice, assistance, and support they need to rebuild their lives, and whereas advocacy by and for victims of crime is itself a form of seeking justice, no less than justice sought in the courts, and whereas the accomplishments of the victims' rights movement achieved through compassion and collaboration and built on the courageous advocacy of individual victims and their families across the country, inspire in us hope for the future progress and greater healing. And whereas we are determined to respond to crime and violence by helping victims find not only support, recovery, and justice, but also a sense of hope for their future. And whereas the National Victims' Rights Week, April 19th to 25th, 2020, provides an opportunity to recommit ensuring that accessibility, appropriate, and trauma-informed services are offered to all victims of crime. And whereas the Reno County District's Attorney Office is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim service providers, and bringing hope and healing to all victims and survivors. Now therefore, we, the Board of County Commissioners of Reno County, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the week of April 19th to 25th, 2020 as Reno County Crime Victims' Rights Week, and reaffirm the Board of the Reno County Commissioners' commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims in crime during Victims' Crime Rights Week throughout the year, and express our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so that they might find relevant assistance, support, justice, and peace. In witness, therefore, we set our hands and cause the seal of Reno County, Kansas to be affixed this 21st day of April 2020. Would you like to make some comments, Sir District Attorney, please?
Well, first of all, Chairman Sellers, I want to thank you very much. I appreciate it. Commissioner Hurst and Commissioner Bush. I know Commissioner Bush used to be a victim witness coordinator for a large district attorney's office in Colorado, so I know he can appreciate the job that we do, but it's not just the district attorney's office, it's a team effort. It's all about team. I see Sheriff Campbell on this conference, and he's just as responsible as I am, as well as Chief Hooper, as well as the police departments in Bueller and Haven and South Hutchinson. There's also Bright House. There are emergency room personnel. There are a number of people that are just as responsible for advocating for victims as the district attorney's office, and so I accept this on behalf of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our second proclamation for this week is Police Week. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas from the beginning of this nation, law enforcement officers have played an important role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms which are guaranteed by the Constitution and in protecting the lives and property of our citizens. And whereas through consistent application of new procedures and techniques, such officers are becoming more efficient in their enforcement of our laws. And whereas it is important that our people know and understand the problems, duties, responsibilities of their police departments and the necessity for cooperating with them in maintaining law and order. And whereas, since the first recorded death in 1791, and more than 23,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty, including 128 officers in 2019 alone. And whereas it is fitting and proper that we express our gratitude for the dedicated service and courageous deeds of law enforcement officers and for the contributions they have made to the security and well-being of all of our people. Now, therefore, we, the Board of County Commissioners, call upon all citizens of Reno County, Kansas, and all patriotic, civil, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 10th through 16th as Police Week. Please join us in commemorating police officers, past and present, who in their faithful and loyal devotion to the responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in doing so have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens, and do hereby proclaim the week of May 10th through 16th, 2020 as Police Week. Furthermore, we call upon all the citizens of Reno County, Kansas to observe May 15th, 2020 as Police Officers Memorial Day to honor these police officers who through their courageous deeds have lost their lives or have become disabled in the performance of their duty. Is there anyone? I saw that our sheriff was on the line. Does anybody want to make any comments about this proclamation?
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is Sheriff Campbell. Chairman, Commissioners, I appreciate the fact that you guys signed a proclamation that allows us to recognize and acknowledge those that go out every day to provide a public service and provide a blanket of security for the citizens of Reno County. And on behalf of law enforcement across the county, I thank you. But I think it also allows us a minute to celebrate the lives of those that actually have paid the ultimate sacrifice in the name of liberty. So I thank you all for that. On the 15th, typically we have a memorial service out front. It's provided by a couple local nonprofit groups, a luncheon afterwards. That was scheduled to be on the 15th, and due to the current situation, that has been canceled. But so I just wanted to get that out there as well. But thank you all for acknowledging this.
Hey, so you don't expect to have any other programs in May for this?
Currently, no, sir.
Okay.
Sheriff Campbell, this is Ron Hurst. I hate to hear that, because having it outside and being able to do social distancing, I hope that there will be at least some type of small ceremony out there in recognition of all of our peace officers, sheriff and police.
Hey, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. We may consider something like that. Like I said, the groups that help us put this on, they have all canceled, so it forced us to go ahead and cancel everything. But we definitely have a little bit of time. We can look at maybe doing something.
Okay. Thank you. I think Sheriff Campbell, in these days where we see nurses and doctors and our police officers and sheriff's officers and all of our first responders, they're in our minds. I think I agree with Commissioner Hurst that if there could be some small ceremony, it would certainly be more than appropriate. All these first responders, which we should be thinking of all the time, seem to be more important in times of crisis like that we're in today. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, item 9, replacement of Reno County Fire District Number 3's command vehicle. I see that Chief White is on the line. You want to make this presentation, please?
Yes, thank you, sir. This is Bob White, Chief of Reno County Fire District 3. I come to you this morning looking to replace our command vehicle. You have the documentation in your packet. The 99 Durango is what we currently have. We purchased it used through emergency management. It was Errol's vehicle. Served its purpose well, especially for us first time with the volunteer service having a command vehicle. Let us get a feel for what we needed and what we didn't need in a vehicle before we spent a lot of money. And just in the last month or so, it's really started to show some wear. There's some weather strips that go along the bottom of the windows on the doors to help keep the rainwater from going inside the door to rust them out. Those are started to come apart. I found out those are considered obsolete items and no longer available, so I can't fix that part of the vehicle. And then about 2 weeks ago, the engine started to develop a slight knockdown on the bottom end, indicative that we've got some bearings starting to fail. And I only paid $2,000 for the car, and I won't be able to fix an engine for $2,000. So I think the time's come for us to look at getting a vehicle, and more in line now with what I know I'm using the command vehicle for, and also long-term investment for the district.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Is there a motion to approve this item 9A?
I would move to approve the replacement of Reno County Fire District Number 3's command vehicle with a new 3/4 ton crew cab 4-wheel drive pickup for a total cost not to exceed $35,000.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion by anyone?
Very good information put to us.
I'm sorry, Ron?
Very good information that was provided by Chief White.
Oh, I'd also like to commend you, Chief. I noted that in your report that you originally bought this vehicle from your first vehicle from emergency management for $2,000, and pretty much ran it into the ground, and now you need a new vehicle. I just want to commend you on being frugal and using the county and your district's resources wisely, and always looking for opportunities to save. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thanks, sir.
Okay, please call the roll.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst,
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers.
Yes. County Administrator, is there any update on the fire district study that was to be done by the consultant?
Adam may have more detailed information, but last I knew, all the surveys had been completed by all the fire districts, but the individual out of Wisconsin, because of stay-at-home orders, is not able to travel down here to meet with people. I would see if Adam had any further updates.
Chairman, that is an accurate statement. I spoke with him sometime, I believe it was last week. My weeks are kind of running together, but he said they are in a stay-at-home order. His plan is, as soon as that's lifted and Kansas stabilizes as well, is to get down here and complete that study. We're kind of in a standstill due to these orders right now.
Okay, I'm pleased that all the fire districts have completed their part of this situation. Okay, we'll move on to item 10, additions to the agenda. I believe the first item is the 2020 budget cuts presented by our county administrator.
Okay. In the packet, you have a memo that kind of goes over the process and then some details. To explain the budget cuts, when I was talking with staff, looking at possible revenue reductions, we looked at sales tax, interest income, future property tax. We don't have really any quantitative numbers to know what that's going to be, but we came up with about $1 million in cuts for the 2020 budget that should help us through the end of this year. There may be more needed in 2021. So what I did is I took all the 2020 budgeted items for each department and agency that were property tax funded. So that did not include like community corrections or solid waste. And then I took their percent of the total to figure out the percent of reduction each department would have to come up with instead of an across-the-board cut. I took the $1 million times that percentage, which ranged kind of from a department that may have 0.4% reduction to an 11.3% cut. And met with every director and also communicated with Dave Johnson, the EMS director. All directors and agency directors, heads, even for example, district court, district attorney, sheriff, EMS, and then all the internal department, more clerical, like treasurer, clerk, county administration, human resources. All of us made cuts, and those are on the spreadsheet. So there were numbers as low as $1,000 for the police chaplain, up to $120,000 out of capital outlay. So I wanted to see if you had any questions regarding these cuts. The only agencies that did not receive recommended cuts were mental health, museum, and tech, and that was because they were allocated the money in the budget last year. For this year, a good portion of that money has already been sent to them, and it was I was unsure if, in the short time frame I put these numbers together, if the full commission was wanting to cut those outside agencies. So I left them out of the $1 million, but it was $1 million, $4,624. That is recommended cuts. If you do approve this, the process would be, Shonda and Leslie have already looked at the line item numbers in the New World system. They would be reduced, and so any reports that the departments run, if they do a monthly report, it'll show their amended budget, not their adopted budget from earlier this year.
Okay, thank you. Are questions by the commissioners on this process or the numbers presented?
I guess I would only say that if you got to this $1 million figure without cutting outside agencies, then I would just say leave them alone.
Okay. Other comments, Commissioner Bush?
No.
Commissioner Hurst?
What is the technical process to go through amending a budget? Is there one?
The cuts on this, the recommendation is more internal, so I would ask for consent, or if you guys want to make a motion to approve these cuts, that'd probably be the best way. And then internally on our financial system, we would make those adjustments. This does not change the state budget form, but for the 2021 budget, the state budget form will show anticipated expenditures for 2020. The changes would be reflected there, along with reductions in income projections. But we aren't truly changing the state form. That would be a public hearing process, but that's not needed at this time.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was concerned with, is process.
So do we need a motion, or can we just, by consensus, give you permission to do this? If we need a motion, then we have to make it an action item, right?
Yes.
Instead of a discussion
I
item.
move to authorize you to make the proposed cuts.
I think if you just move to authorize me to make those cuts, that would work.
Do we need to make this an action item as opposed to a discussion item?
Is it on for action?
It was on discussion.
I think, Bob,
Well, they can advance it.
I'm not trying to argue,
Well, then take it up next week.
but I think we put this under item 10, which is additions to the agenda, not discussion items.
I don't really care as long as Joe says it's all legal.
Sure.
Doesn't matter to me.
He says it's okay if we move it. Yeah, since it's now as, because it's
Discussion.
10. Did you have it? Okay, it was a discussion item after the Reno County Fire District, so it's in the right section now for a motion.
All right, I make a motion, we approve the amendments to the budget as presented by staff.
Second?
Okay, I do have one question. There's a motion and a second. Randy, the $1 million that's coming out of the courthouse capital fund, could you discuss a little bit what that includes? I'm assuming that does not cancel the current window project that's going on, and if that is proceeding, what this money was intended for initially, or is it just a fund or future capital improvements?
It's a little bit of both. The courthouse improvements, the $1 million, is probably for the windows and other damage to property from the earthquakes. But the $7 million for capital outlay is also a cushion for any major projects that come up during the year. So the reduction in this number is saying we're not going to spend this amount, but we'll still have the cash balance for other items if they come up. So we won't be short anywhere for the windows or earthquake repairs.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. If there's no other questions, let's call the roll on this item, please.
Gentlemen, this is Sheriff Campbell. I have a quick question, if that's okay.
Sure. Please.
So when we were looking at this and figuring up our budgets and the cuts, we believe that this was nothing but a plan in case, because we anticipate something happening. It's not because it has happened. Is that true? As far as the tax revenue that we're looking at, this is just an anticipation of it.
Sheriff, I'll answer that from my perspective, and then others can answer it from what they believe to be true. From my standpoint, I don't think that there's any question that we're going to see significant decreases in our sales tax revenue for April, May, etc. Obviously, some of that is offset by huge volumes of retail in the food industry, the food store industry, but that's going to be offset by all the businesses that are closed. So I think that these cuts that we're proposing today are going to be based on the reality of what we're going to see in the months to come in our sales tax decreases. And with that statement, is there anything others want to say?
I guess I would just support your statements, Chairman Sellers, and I would just say, Sheriff, that in my mind, from day one, these were cuts that we would be making based on what we know will be a downturn in revenues to the county. And it's going to be a while to get these businesses back up and running again. And I think we're looking at a recession in our community. And I think it's going to be a 1 to 2 year, maybe even 3 years before we get back to the numbers of revenue that we've had before, depending on how quickly we can get out of this. And if we don't have a huge surge in 3 months or 4 months of coronavirus as we let things up. So, again, my position has always been that these were cuts that we'll be making this year, and that we're going to be looking at a very pared down budget next year as well.
I would concur with both of you in the fact that I would agree completely that also there's a problem with sales tax and knowing how much we get, because it's about a 60-day lag before we have any indication of sales tax. So it's called preparedness.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if the other two commissioners agree with me, but it would be my feelings that if this economy is more of a U economy, which I think it will be, instead of a V resurgent economy, that not only are these cuts going to be necessary, but the 2021 budget will have to reflect more hard looks at how we spend the money that we have available. I think every business, every industry, every form of government is going to take a big hit now and for the next couple of years. And so to tell, I think the department heads of the county have to foresee that this might have hurt what you did on these cuts that are in this motion today, but I believe the county will be coming to the departments for next year's budget looking for at least this much or more because of what we'll see in the summer and fall.
And commissioners, just to kind of also explain, the cuts were based on just estimates of what those losses are going to be. We don't see those, as you guys have all mentioned, we don't know what those losses in revenue are going to be or when they will take place. It may be June, July, August before we start seeing cuts. But what this does is this helps ensure that with these cuts, we're going to have extra money in the cash balance for the various property tax funds so that next year and future years we have a little bit of a cushion with the expectation of revenues being at least $1 million in losses.
It would be my feeling that the presentation that Nick made this morning from the National Association of Counties would suggest that the money coming into the counties would be much more to the negative than we've even forecast at this point. Would you agree with that, Randy? Or
it could be. It really depends on when we open back up. I think if we're closed for a few more months, or if businesses don't, start operating 100%, then it will be more than $1 million. But
sure,
that's still just an estimate, and with the hopes of slowly opening the economy back up in the near future.
And I think a good point to that is based on what the federal response is about how they say they're recommending you don't go to phase one until you have a downward statewide turn. That's going to get us through May being closed, conservatively estimating. Now maybe we'll have opportunities to open up sooner through the governor's office, but we may spend all of May with the same problems we have, and we're gonna lose more and more businesses if we sit out for another month. Sheriff, it's not good.
No, I understand, sir, and I think it's excellent to have a plan to provide clarity to the department heads and elected officials as budgets are being cut and the citizens, the services that are being cut. Would it be possible to hear some reports over the next 6 to 8 months on comparatively to last year's months on the incomes to show that downward trend?
yeah.
Well,
Certainly, I think that's more important than ever. I believe we're kind of getting some quarterly updates on our expenditure project due to what we thought it would be, and I think the sheriff is very correct when he says that we need to watch this closer on, if not a month-to-month basis, every couple months to get an update of where we're at.
And internally, we are looking at that. Leslie's looking at that almost daily. So we definitely could probably provide some reports to the commission to give an overview of how things are looking.
I think it'd be good to get a monthly report when the numbers are in. As Commissioner Hurst said, there's a lag time on a lot of this, but it seems to me like every month there should be a time, whether it's the second or third week, that we could get a financial report on where we're at revenue-wise. To the sheriff's point, let's stay on top of this, and I'd like to see monthly reports when they make sense. The numbers are in, that we can have Brad or Leslie report to us. I don't know what you think, Mr. Chair.
I agree. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the sales tax numbers come out on the 20th for the month before. Does anybody think that might be correct?
I think there's maybe 2 month lag.
I don't know the timing. I mean, I guess my suggestion would be we just get this report whenever it's something that the financial people can say, yeah, this is a hard number for this time period. And then we do it monthly. And let them pick the dates.
I agree.
I don't necessarily want a full-blown report. Just a kind of a summary of where we're heading and why.
I agree.
Agreed. Randy, would you please make sure that either your department or working with Leslie provides that on a timely basis to the commission, please?
Yes.
Okay, I assume that's agreed to. Okay, are we ready to go on to 10B, which is the motion to repeal emergency order 20-23.
You need to vote on the action item. You made a motion and a second, so now it's time for a roll call on this item.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry, I apologize. You need a better chairman in this role of Zoom meetings here. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst,
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers.
Yes. Randy, thank you for putting that together. I'm sure it was a lot of work for you and Leslie to do that here in just a couple of weeks and get with all your department heads the way you did on this item. So appreciate your hard work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is an item repealing emergency order 20-23. I would make the motion that we repeal emergency order 20-23.
It's that, Commissioner, it's actually 20-03.
Oh, okay.
I like 2023 better.
Wait, are you going to vote no on either number?
It depends on the discussion and whether I'm willing to listen to reason, Ron.
Okay.
Commissioner,
There is a motion. Is there a second so we can discuss the item?
I seconded it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? My opinion, we thoroughly discussed this before we even put it onto the agenda. But if somebody wants to,
Commissioner Sellers,
something else, please do.
do you? Joe mentioned maybe possibly reading this order, just so the public knows what it says.
That would be fine.
Do you have it, or do you want me to read it?
I do not have it
Okay.
in front of me.
Okay. Order terminating emergency order 20-03. Whereas on March 30, 2020, this Board of County Commissioners issued its emergency order 20-03, which prohibited open burning and agricultural open burning in Reno County, Kansas for a period of 7 days from and after March 30th, 2020. And whereas on April 7, 2020, this Board of County Commissioners issued its order extending emergency order 20-03 through April 28th, 2020. And whereas this Board of County Commissioner deems it no longer necessary for said burn ban to remain effective. Now therefore be it ordered by the Board of County Commissioners of Reno County, Kansas, that emergency order 20-03 as extended through April 28, 2020 shall be terminated effective April 21st, 2020 at 12:01 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
As I understand it, that's what we're voting on.
Right.
Is there anybody else that wants to make a comment in regard to this motion, which has a second?
I'd like to hear from Adam or Chief White. Adam, you're muted.
Chief, if you want to go ahead and speak up, Chief, I can talk after you.
I know this is a complicated matter, difficult decision for you guys, a lot of different sides to it, or some people use it layers to the onion. I don't know what the real matter is. I'll be honest, other than Adam, I've had no government official contact me about my opinion or what's going on in our district. I've only had one farmer contact me, and we had a fairly lengthy, cordial conversation. And by the time we got done, he understood and agreed, and we moved on. If we look at it simply from a fire standpoint, and yes, there's fires, and yes, we have people, and we have fire trucks. Yeah, there's no fire danger right now to justify it, but again, we're in times that's unprecedented. So many layers. We think about exposure to our people. We think if we have potential, even if it's a false symptomatic person, they're symptomatic, but they're not carrying the virus. They go in for medical treatment. That's going to take medical professionals. That takes the PPE that's been in short supply, potentially test kits that are in short supply. And do we unnecessarily want to put people into the system as a fire standpoint. You know, I wouldn't have initially thought of all those things, but, you know, Adam with his expertise and his position, that's his job, is big picture to advise all of us on being smart about what we do. I personally think it's a smart thing. You know, even like Commissioner Hurst said, we're past the prime burn time. Green ups occurred on the pastures. Not much going on. You know, I kind of agree with Commissioner Bush. We're close enough now. What are we gaining over 7 days, 8 days? So versus taking a potential, you know, do we want to put people in the system, or you know, the potential is we get on a scene and we have multiple firefighters. We can't always respect social distancing, and somebody does happen to come to the scene with the virus and then spreads it among multiple fire. And if we end up quarantining multiple fire districts, how's that going to impact long-term response in the county? So a lot of different things to think about. I don't envy your position, but that's kind of my take. I would be in favor of just leaving it in place and letting it expire in a week.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Adam, do you have additional comments?
I just have a few closing comments. I just want to remind us that this is in direct relation to the COVID-19 response and the public health emergency. The biggest things that I want to remind you of is that our smoke inhalation, they show the same symptoms as what someone who is exhibiting symptoms for COVID-19 would show. So even if someone has those symptoms, they could be self-quarantined for 14 days, or they could go to the hospital or doctor's office and waste some of our test kits or personal protective equipment when that really wasn't necessary. The other piece of it is we talked about personal protective equipment, and that stuff is readily available at co-ops, Ace Hardwares, things like that, hardware stores on a daily basis. But during this response, it's not. We have trouble finding it. The only stuff we found in Hutchinson recently, we found that they really weren't meeting the specs, and you could actually see through the mask. So it's not anything that the public can get. So the people who already suffer from respiratory illnesses, they're not going to be able to get in that personal protective equipment. And then there's also a nationwide, statewide, and local shortages of those respiratory drugs that they would take, whether it's an oral steroid or sometimes even an inhaler. There's a shortage of that, and they can't get those things. So it's not only looking at the safety of our firefighters, but also looking at the safety of our citizens. And like Chief White pointed out, there's many layers to this onion, and it's peeling it back and realizing what the core issue is. It's not that we don't have equipment or can't respond to these fires. It's the public health piece that we're concerned about. And that's all I have for it.
Okay. Appreciate your comments.
Adam, I might ask a question. Of the last fire down there that was down at Parallel Road, was there any firefighters that needed medical attention?
I don't believe so.
Obviously, the county commission is very split on our views here. I appreciate Adam's viewpoints very, very much. I appreciate Chief White and what he said. I think the reason that I asked for this to be on the agenda today is I feel strongly in my mind that I made a poor vote when this was approved. I should have argued more with Adam for his reasons and the positive reasons to do this at the time. And I guess I'm the kind of person that when I think I made a mistake, I'm big enough to say I made a mistake. I feel strongly at this point in time that I should have voted with Commissioner Hurst to not do this originally, and that's why I think the week is important at this point in time, is to my mind correct the mistake that I made originally when this was discussed.
Well, I made a lot of my initially based on recommendations from the state and our emergency management people, and the entire gist of the conversation is safety of our first responders. And then I hear that 8 out of 11 fire districts want to keep the burn ban in place for the people that are on the front line. We can sit here and play the what-if game all we want, but to Chief White's point, we're putting those firefighters in close contact with each other. We're putting them 4 in a truck. We're putting them inside their firehouses, and then we're taking the risk of them being injured. The fact that no one was injured in the last fire, that's great. But what about the next one? And that fire was a burn ban that went wild, that did burn, according to GPS, 810 acres, and required every single fire district, plus Sedgwick, to come out and fight it. All of those men and women were at risk. And so I'm not going to support this because I'm going to support the recommendations of our staff based on science and the recommendations on the people on the front line that put themselves at risk while we sit in our offices. I guess that's the end of my speech, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Very good comments there. Now, I agree with many of those comments. I just feel like we should have addressed this day one differently, and when I feel like I've made a mistake, I feel like I want to be a big enough person to correct the mistake. There's no further discussion. Please call the roll on this motion to cancel the emergency order effective noon today.
Commissioner Bush,
No.
Commissioner Hurst,
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers.
Yes. Thank you for that discussion. Okay, what we have to have an executive session, Randy?
Yes.
Yeah. Chairman, County Councilor gave me something to read, the motion that he'd like for us to read into the record, if you don't mind.
Sure.
First of all, I propose we give 60 minutes for this, and I'm not sure what is. Are you two driving down here and we're going to meet in the commission chambers using social distancing, or are we doing a Zoom meeting like this?
The intent was for everyone to come down to the commission chambers, and we'll close the doors and we'll have enough, the 6 feet space.
Okay, so we need to give 30 minutes for people to get here, 15, 20, what? See what I mean? Okay,
That's fine. I could be there in 30 minutes. It's 10:49 now. It'd be 11:15, something like that.
Okay.
Ron, can you arrive?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so let me see if I've got this motion right. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we recess into executive session starting at 11:15 for 60 minutes in the County Commission chambers to confer with the board's attorney on privileged legal matters pertaining to the Kansas Employee Relations Act, KSA 75-4321, and the establishment of uniform pay plans and procedures applicable to all county employees. No formal decision will be made following the executive session. Parties to be in attendance include the county councilor, county administrator, and county HR director, and the meeting shall end at 12:15 p.m.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I second the motion.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst,
Yes.
Commissioner Sellers.
Yes. We'll adjourn the meeting until the executive session that is scheduled at 11:15. Thank you.